and he joins me now with a look at the Eagles as they prepare for the fourth and final tune-up for the Atlanta game on Monday night, the 14th, right here on 97.3 ESPN. And Jimmy joins us now with a look at this Birds team. Jimmy, they were a 20-1 shot to win the Super Bowl in July. They are up to 10-1. In fact, there's only 3 teams in the entire NFL that have a better shot. Is that warranted from what you've seen?
That is a wild overreaction, in my opinion. although to be clear, I mean they have looked really, really good through the first 3 games of the preseason. Clearly, I mean anyone can see that. I'm not breaking any news there. Certainly they handled the Colts, they handled the Ravens, they didn't handle the Packers. They just completely blew the doors off them in that first quarter. Facing the Packers' first team defense, and I think there's certainly a lot to be encouraged by from the way they performed in the preseason. But going from 20-1 to 10-1 is crazy, and shows you the overreactionary nature of sports betting. And that's not necessarily how Vegas thinks of the Eagles. It's how people are betting it. So people saw those preseason games and said, "Oh my God, the Eagles look great. Let's go throw some money on them." But certainly I am in the camp that again, the obvious camp that they have looked tremendous throughout the preseason.
Yeah, I was going to say, because if you were busy on that first night, which was an odd Sunday or Sunday afternoon in middle of August,
right,
you might not have caught that one, or the weird Saturday night times that you may have had something to do in the summer. That game on Saturday might have been the first time you saw them. Have they consistently impressed you?
In the preseason games, yeah. I mean, throughout training camp, I thought that they played really well. Not played really well, but I thought they looked good in practice when they had those joint practices with the Ravens, which is really the best barometer for kind of evaluating how the team as a whole looks. Because when they're practicing against each other, the offense can look good, and then the snap reaction is to go, well, the defense didn't look good, and vice versa. If the defense looks good, then maybe the offense doesn't look so good. So it's not the best way to evaluate how the team looks overall, but I thought against the Ravens in those joint practices, they did look really good. They looked like a legit team. But yeah, I mean, you go position by position. I think you don't really have too many holes on this team. There's some areas of depth where they can be concerned, like the offensive line, like safety, although there isn't a team in the NFL that doesn't have safety depth issues. Outside linebacker depth is a little bit of a concern, but when you look at the starters on this roster, I mean, there's certainly some areas where they could be better, but I don't really see any glaring, gaping holes.
Jimmy Kempski is with us. PhillyVoice.com, at Jimmy Kempski on Twitter. You talk about Sam Bradford, and we'll get into some of the glaring holes or where they might be, but Bradford doesn't seem to be one. He may have been one entering. Has he answered all the questions for you? Do you feel like this guy has passed all the tests? He's ready to rock and roll. Obviously, he looked really good in the 3 series he got the other night, but again, small sample size. Has he proven to you that this guy is ready for Monday Night Football?
For me, he's not passed all the tests yet. Clearly, his performance against the Packers was amazing. I mean, all 10 of his. I did a breakdown of all 10 of his passes. Not a breakdown so much as I just took GIFs of them and popped them up on the site, and they basically just play in a loop over and over again. And I did that for all 10 of his passes, and I can't find the slightest little nitpick with any one of those passes. They were all perfect. They were all right on the mark. They were all thrown with good timing. There's just absolutely nothing wrong whatsoever with any of those 10 passes that he made. Incredibly accurate. He threw with anticipation. He put everything on the mark when he had to, kind of fire one in there. You saw a little bit of that too. The pass to Sproles on that wheel route was phenomenal. And then you look at the 2 throws that he made on the corner routes to Jordan Mathews, also phenomenal. The little crosser to Burton in the end zone, great pass. I mean, just top to bottom was awesome against the Packers. And, there's nothing to complain about there. The only thing that really does concern me a little bit, maybe not even a little bit, but I think is a legit concern, is that it really hasn't moved at all. And this goes through OTAs, mini camp, the entirety of training camp. he barely has moved at all. I mean, throughout training camp, what's basic for Eagles quarterbacks, at least from what I've seen in the 3 years in practice under Chip Kelly, is they really play out their fakes well in practice. When they hand out, and they kind of sprint out and the roll out after every play. A lot of times if they don't see anything open in 7-on-7s or 11-on-11s, they'll take off, and it's just a very common, natural thing. By my count, Sam Bradford ran in those practices twice. And really it has nothing to do with whether you're a mobile quarterback or not. It's a very common thing to do in these practices is they run, and he barely did it at all. He did it twice, like I said, in over 20 practices at the NovaCare complex. So I didn't really see any of that. I didn't really see him having to make any sudden movements whatsoever, trying to escape from the pocket from pass rushers, which, of course, he's not going to do wearing the bright red jersey in practice. Didn't really have to do it much against the Ravens or the Packers, although he took 2 hits in the Ravens game. He took 1 in the Packers game, which was kind of good to see in a weird way. You see him get a hit. You see him get up from that. But, again, I just haven't seen him have to make a sudden reactionary move to a pass rusher coming at him, and I don't know that he's going to be very successful getting away from hits, either when he's holding the ball or I guess as he's throwing, you're not going to be able to get out of the way anyway. But, that would be a concern of mine, that he just doesn't really have any kind of mobility at all. And not that he doesn't, but the point is we haven't seen it yet. So at some point he's going to have to move. I would imagine that the Falcons and whoever else that they have to face early on in the season are really going to send the heat at him just to see if he can handle it. And that'll be the next test for me to see how he stands up to that.
Jimmy Kempski's with us talking Eagles. PhillyVoice.com. I know the Tebow fans love you. They seem to be sending you flowers at every opportunity. Does he, in your mind, have a legitimate shot to make this team? I know today, Chip, he didn't want to say who was starting. Then I guess Barkley said he was starting. Then Chip agreed that he was starting, but that didn't mean he was going to get as many snaps. Last year, he played 3 quarters. Kinney played 1 in that last game. What is the third quarterback battle? How do you sum it up?
Well, I don't think either of them have done anything to make the team, frankly. Barkley is a quarterback who is always going to have below-average arm strength, and it's just not good enough in any other area to sort of offset that, that his arm. It doesn't do really anything particular. He doesn't have that one thing that he does really well. It just seems to be kind of average across the board. And then you throw the below-average NFL arm on top of it. I just don't really see him as a quarterback that's going to stick with this team any longer. Tebow, I actually do think is going to make the team, and this goes back to the beginning of August, and actually kind of late into July. I spoke with a number of people that kind of have some legitimate insights and information into the Eagles' thinking on some things, and the thinking was that Tebow was, not only going to make the team, but he was going to play. So I don't know how much or if that has changed in the last month. Certainly, they've had a month to evaluate Tebow. Certainly, they might have changed their mind on that after having seen him for a month in practice and the first three or four preseason games. But I think they're going to keep him. I think they signed him for a reason, and I think he's going to stick with the team. Whether that's right or wrong is up to everyone's seen him play in the first 3 season games. So that's up to your interpretation. But I think he is going to stick with the team. Personally, if it were me, I would just roll with 2 quarterbacks, and that's the thing that's becoming more and more common in the NFL. There are 15 teams in the NFL that rolled with 2 quarterbacks last year. And the reason why is because there was that rule where you keep 45 guys active on game day, and then you had that one spot for the quote-unquote emergency third quarterback. But they did away with that rule where you just keep 46 guys active now. So teams didn't really have much of a reason to keep that third quarterback as much as they did in the past. So if it were me, again, I would just keep 2 quarterbacks, even though Bradford is certainly injury-prone and Sanchez has had his injury problems as well. For my, the way I see it, you get down to that third quarterback, you're kind of screwed anyway. So I would just go 2 quarterbacks, but again, I do think Tebow's going to make the roster. Yeah,
and what with that rule, what would Tebow's role be on a game day? He would have to be activated, right? He'd have to be one of the 46?
Yeah, I mean, he'd have to be one of the 46, so they're going to use him in any way. And, I don't know how they'd use him. We saw him in the 2-point conversion scenario when Cody Parkey was hurt. Otherwise, Parkey would have been kicking those extra points. He didn't convert either of them. And then, there's the thinking that, maybe he can be a guy on third and really short that can maybe pull a QB sneak. I don't really see Sam Bradford running any QB sneaks this year. That could be, an option for him as well. And, maybe they can come out with some jumbo sets and just get him in there in some surprise scenarios. But I think that, that kind of thing doesn't really fool NFL teams anymore. We've seen the Wildcat come and go. And, I just don't know that him being in there is more effective than a guy like Sam Bradford, who is as accurate as he is. And you have running backs like DeMarco Murray and Ryan Mathews and, a scat back like Darren. So you have the best, Darren Sproles, you have the best, 1-2-3 trio of running backs in the NFL. So I just really don't know that putting him on the field is the best idea. But again, I do think that he is going to make the team. Now, whether he's active on game day or not, may have to do with whether they have some guys hurt. I don't even mean at the quarterback position, but I think initially I doubt they view him as one of the, top 46 contributing players on the roster. But if you get a couple guys hurt, then, guys who normally might be inactive would be active. So he may be a guy that, a little bit later down in the season, he's active and they can use him in some small roles. But ultimately, I wouldn't do it. I think that, they're better served having a position player make the team instead, because this team is actually very deep. Like I mentioned before, you have depth concerns at outside linebacker, offensive line, and safety. But otherwise, at a number of their positions, they're super deep, and it's going to be difficult, letting some of the guys go that they might have to let go if they keep a guy like him.
Jimmy Kempski, PhillyVoice.com for his coverage of the Philadelphia Eagles, at Jimmy Kempski on Twitter. I mean, you were around the team last year. The difference between Bradford and Foles for you, is a noticeable difference that, man, this guy, I mean, I like Nick, but you can notice a difference. Do you have that feeling watching Sam against Nick?
Yeah. Yeah, clearly Sam Bradford is the more talented quarterback. I don't think there's any dispute to that. It's just for Bradford, it's a matter of can he stay healthy? And, it's not as if Nick Foles was, Eli Manning or Joe Flacco in terms of Iron Man status himself. But, Sam Bradford coming on, I don't need to say it, like he's coming off 2 ACL tears. So for him, it's all about, whether he can stay healthy or not. But in terms of accuracy, in terms of anticipation throws, in terms of arm strength, in terms of intelligence, I think Sam Bradford has a leg up in Nick Foles in all those categories.
And is it a surprising difference? Were you like, there's a lot of people thought when they made the trade it was almost a lateral move, or that you were hoping the potential, but when you got a chance to see Sam, was it like, what, this guy's better than I gave him credit for? Yep.
Yeah, I can certainly admit to that. You'd heard about how, like, when they traded for him, everyone knows how good of a college quarterback he was. He was obviously the number 1 overall draft pick for the Rams in 2010, I think it was. And he was a guy that was thought of by, a lot of scouts as sort of the most, the best quarterback that has come out in like the last 10 or so years, aside from, a guy like Andrew Luck. And it's because of his smarts, and it's because of his accuracy and his ability to make those anticipation throws, and just a phenomenal prospect coming out of college. And he had injury histories, and he had a team that stunk. Like, he had an offensive line that couldn't protect him. He had receivers that just weren't good. And as a result, his numbers and his performance just as a whole suffered. And there is this, YouTube video out there of every pass that he threw that was over 10 or 15 yards or something like that. You see how many passes that were dropped by his receivers. And it kind of made a little bit more sense why his completion percentage over his career in St. Louis was as low as it was. But still, you'd like to see him have more success, even with the players around him not being as good as you'd hope. But again, when he got into camp here and you could see how accurate he was, that was really the thing that surprised me. And the biggest surprise for me really is the way that he's thrown with anticipation. And I'll point back again to that wheel route by Sproles. It's just absolutely phenomenal anticipation. Sproles comes out like into the flat, and the ball's in the air before Sproles makes his cut upfield, and he couldn't have possibly placed it in a better spot for Sproles to just run under it, put his hands out, and the ball just lands gently into his hands for a touchdown. And what really is the rapport that he's developed with his receivers and his running backs and everyone else, that just practicing with them in just it has to be about 30 practices that they've had since OTA's minicamp and training camp. To have that kind of rapport with his receivers and his running backs is really kind of phenomenal. And I think that's a tribute to his football IQ and his intelligence.
Good stuff with Jimmy here. Let me get your opinion then on the run game, because McCoy has won a rushing championship.
Yep.
Murray has won a rushing championship. I contend that if you took that off his resume and just said, who's more talented, Murray or Mathews, you might say Mathews is the most talented of the bunch. Is the Murray-Mathews duo a definitive change or upgrade over McCoy?
I do. Yeah, I think so. I think that the two of those guys combined are better than McCoy. They're different. They're different flavors than what LaShawn McCoy was.
Sure.
And we all know what LaShawn McCoy was. He was shifty. He could make people look stupid with his cuts, and as Trevor Handle was cut on dime. So he knew what he was too. And he just was just a very electric, very exciting player. These guys are just, you give them the ball, see hole, hit hole, somebody gets your way, run them over, and that's just how they run. And I think that the way that Chip Kelly's offense wears opponents down with that fast-paced offense, and then you put those two sledgehammers in there, who not only are just sledgehammers, they can run. I mean, both of them can run, especially Mathews has just looked really, really good. That's been really the guy that I've been surprised with by how good he looks. And it really shouldn't come as much of a surprise because he was, the 12th overall pick, I think, when he came out of college. He's another guy like Bradford who has, suffered some injuries throughout his career. And, but so far, from what we've seen with the Eagles, he's just been tremendous, and that duo could really wear teams down going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I like Mathews a lot. I said, the fact that he was in San Diego and hurt a lot, not a lot of people know him. You put him in Dallas, you might have heard a lot more about Ryan Mathews and maybe less about DeMarco Murray. And, obviously Murray got a lot of the accolades because he wins the rushing championship and all the touches, and he's on a higher profile team. But would you be surprised if Mathews becomes the guy they lean on at some point in the season?
Yeah, well, if Murray gets hurt, then sure, they're going to have to. But, yeah, I think they're going to split carries. I don't think they're going to lean on if they lean on somebody, it'll be Murray, in my opinion. But I think they'll use both of them a lot if they can. Obviously, they're going to be running the ball more if they have leads in games, and the more you can run, obviously, the better chance you have of winning games. And of course, that's really running the ball is really a product of being ahead in games. So, I think those two guys are going to both get their fair share of opportunities, but ultimately, I think it'll be Murray. That's kind of the lead guy.
Jimmy, is Byron Maxwell as advertised or as Paycheck says?
Yeah, well, he's paid like a top 5 corner in the NFL. I don't know that he's that, but he's very good, and he's going to be an enormous upgrade over Kerry Williams and or obviously Bradley Fletcher. He's looked like he's got good ball skills. He's knocked down a lot of passes in practice. He's just been sticky. He's got the size that you'd like to be able to go up against guys like, week one, they'll be facing Julio Jones and Roddy White. So you get him kind of matched up on a guy like Julio Jones, and that's where the paycheck will be. Because, last year what we saw against the Dallas Cowboys in that second game was Dez Bryant just absolutely ate up Bradley Fletcher. So, he's if he can play certainly better than Bradley Fletcher did in those games, then I think he's worth the money that they gave him, even if he's not a quote-unquote top 5 corner.
And then, obviously, Carroll and Rowe on the other side. Is that an upgrade, or do you still have questions over there? I mean, Carroll was here last year and couldn't get on the field. So why are we supposed to surmise that he's an upgrade over what they had before?
Yeah, the coaches raved about Carroll throughout the entirety of training camp, about how hard he worked in the offseason, how he's looked in this training camp as opposed to last year. And the play that he made, was it the Ravens game? Play he made in that game where they tried to go deep on him, and he not only broke up the play, but he actually kind of tried to volleyball the football because he felt Walter Thurman in the area. So he not only had great coverage on the field, he stuck at the receiver's hip pocket all the way down the field, turned, located the ball in the air, which is something that we didn't see at all last year from Bradley Fletcher or Kerry Williams, and had the presence to just kind of pop the ball up in the air and, just hope that Walter Thurman could pick it off and take it the other way. It was a really impressive play, and I think he has looked better than he did last year.
Obviously, Thursday night, you're not going to see a whole heck of a lot here, and then they'll have the opener against the Atlanta Falcons. If there is something that's left in terms of battles or something that needs to be answered for you from Thursday's game, what are you watching?
I'm sorry, repeat that again, Mike?
If there's something on Thursday that still needs to be answered, that can be answered with that game, because we're not going to see starters for the most part. What is it that you're watching that can still be answered for you Thursday night?
Well, Kiko Alonso said he was going to play, so that'd be it for me, just seeing how he looks in defense. I don't think he's going to play all that much, but clearly, he's a guy that hasn't played throughout the first 3 games of the preseason, and Eagles fans haven't seen him at all. We've seen him a little bit in practice, but yeah, that'll be the guy that I'm watching on Thursday.
All right, he's Jimmy Kempski, at Jimmy Kempski on Twitter. PhillyVoice.com. They got a ton of Eagles stuff for you, and that is headlined by Jimmy over there and some of the other guys at PhillyVoice.com. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Always fun to talk to Jimmy. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. He's a good follow. And a lot of the NFC East followers come after Jimmy. He used to do a lot of NFC East stuff, so you see the Dallas heads and the Giant heads. I don't know that there's any Redskins heads that still exist, but if they're out there, they go after Jimmy as well. I'm sure with some of the things we just tweeted out from Jimmy's conversation, you might go after him as well.